All right, here we go. Okay, welcome in everybody. I'm just getting set up here. It's good to be back for another live stream this week. We're going to be looking at the full moon in Gemini today with the ruler Mercury in Scorpio having just turned direct, appearing as the morning star very recently, something we've talked about on the channel this week. And also, the ruler of this full moon, Mercury, is forming the very last Grand Water Trine. So we're going to talk a little bit about the meaning of this configuration, some good ways of holding it symbolically. I've got an I Ching reading I did this morning to pair alongside of our delineation of the full moon. And then we're going to get into some horoscopes for all 12 signs. And we're going to look in these horoscopes at the juxtaposition between the full moon's whole sign house of Gemini and the host Mercury's whole sign house of Scorpio, which creates an aversion between the two houses. We're going to think about that aversion as crucial to horoscopic understanding of the full moon today. So that's our agenda. But before we get into it, where are you all coming from? Let's do some roll call in the comments section. Tell me what city, what country, what state you're all joining from. I'd love to hear from all of you. Let's do a little roll call. Let's see, we've got Nancy from Puerto Rico. Fantastic. First time joiner for the live. So excited to be here. Welcome. I'm glad you could be here. We've got Divine Love and Light back from Sedona. I recognize you. It's good to see you again. From Portland, Oregon, and from France. Greetings and best regards from the tiny town of Alt, Colorado. Very cool. From Nashville. I love that. Oh, hey, it's Lauren. Good to see you. I see some of you guys let me know that I was atop your podcast list for the year, which I super appreciated. Yesterday, I did a lot of sharing on Instagram of people who were tagging me saying that I was like their most watched podcast of the year. I was so flattered. Thank you. Central New York. What else? Kelsey from LA. Martha from the Florida Keys. Welcome in. Jackson, Michigan. Ontario, Canada. Ohio, the UK. Northeast Georgia. By the way, this picture of a raccoon, I think my kids and my wife have been telling me that like more and more people are starting to have raccoons as pets. That strikes me as pretty crazy. Is that true? Northeast Georgia, Manila. What else? Oslo, Manchester. Got a bunch of Ontarios in the house. I always appreciate that. From Austria, welcome in. From Bell Buckle, Tennessee. That sounds like a town in Tennessee. I feel like that there couldn't be anything more Tennessean. Thunder Bay, Ontario. More Ontario folks filling the house. French Quarter of New Orleans. I love that. Switzerland, Germany. Is this Manila? Amazing. Tiny's Cafe in Toronto. Toronto's a cool city. We were there a couple of years ago we got invited to do some talks. That was really fun. Colorado, Houston, California, San Antonio, Gaithersburg, East Tennessee. Are you close to Bell Buckle? Where else? Bangalore. Hey, welcome in. Boulder, Paris, London, Miami, Dublin, BC. Oh my gosh, love it. Taking your first year class and it's amazing, says Addie. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you, Adam, for all your work. My father passed with the new moon in Scorpio. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Man, that's a big moment. I hope you're doing okay. I'm glad the channel could be contributing something positive. That's really good. That's really nice for me to hear. I really appreciate that and hope you're doing okay. Pittsburgh, Berlin, Macedonia. I think that's a first. Hello, Macedonia. Helsinki. All right, let's do this. Raccoons are trending. They are. That's what I'm saying. I think that's a thing. All right. I think we're just about ready. Let's see. Is there anything else? Salem, Utah from Mindy. All right. South Africa? That's just crazy. Turkey. Okay. Romania. Oh my God. I just subscribed to your YouTube channel after starting your class. See, it's an instructive tale. Our YouTube analytics tell us this all the time. There's like a zillion people watching compared to the amount of subscribers that are watching, which is like good, but you know, like subscribe, it helps us. It helps us so much. You'd be surprised at how much that subscriber number on the channel going up helps you grow as a business and as a community and channel. It's so if you haven't yet subscribed, please do. But on that note, let's get into it. If you're just joining us, we are I'm doing a live stream today to discuss the full moon in Gemini and to give you some horoscopes. We're going to take a really fun, interesting angle on these horoscopes today. We're going to be talking about the full moon in Gemini, which is a fun full moon to talk about. But more specifically, what does it mean that the host of this full moon in Gemini, Mercury, is just turning direct in Scorpio, appearing as the morning star, and completing the last Grand Water Trine configuration as it does so? That is going to inform how we're thinking about this full moon moment, which makes it more potent than it might otherwise look like. On the surface, a full moon in Gemini that doesn't have any massive configurations around it might just look like a run-of-the-mill full moon. All full moons can be a little extra, but it doesn't look very special on the surface until you pay attention to that all-important factor of the host or ruler of the full moon, which is something traditional astrologers taught us to do for thousands of years. Astrologers have been doing it. We tend to lose track of that level of detail in modern astrology because we're so sign-focused, which means we just think full moon in Gemini. That's the beginning and middle of the interpretation. But a full moon in Gemini with its host averse, meaning they don't see each other, in Scorpio as the morning star just turning direct, configured to a Grand Water Trine, that's a big deal. And that's what we're going to talk about today. In order to do that, I'm going to give you a list of just general delineations, but specifically, I'm going to provide you with an overview of the I Ching reading I did this morning. So sometimes what I'll do is, here, I'll just show you. There's my closet. You can see how messy it is with all of my stuff. And what I will do is, quite literally, I will sit on the floor of my closet and I'll have my little notebook and let me just get my camera adjusted there. And I will ask a question. So this morning, the question was, how can we think about collectively as a group of people the broadest, most general, because if I asked for myself, I'd get a different answer, right? So if as a content creator, what are some useful ways of thinking about this full moon, given the background of Mercury? And then I cast the I Ching, I sit with it, think about what it means. Therefore, I know how to talk about it with you guys. I write all of that down, and then I'm going to just explain it to you. So we've got a really interesting reading, and it's a reading that literally speaks to water. And there's been a number of hexagrams like that I've explored recently. For example, the recent Venus opposition to Uranus had some water in it that we discussed in the I Ching. Anyway, so we'll do more of that today with the I Ching, which I think will be really a fun way of trying to break down all the parts of a really interesting full moon configuration. Then I've got horoscopes. We'll walk you through all 12 whole sign horoscopes. In those horoscopes, I've got 3 delineations for each sign that I've written out for you to consider. I decided, rather than going off the cuff, because I'm always trying, as you guys know, if you watch my channel, I'm always trying to figure out how to not die while doing horoscopes because I find them very exhausting and draining. So writing them out in advance and writing out the points I want to make in advance, rather than just kind of going more off the cuff in a kind of extemporaneous speaking style, has been really helpful. So I've got some really good points for each sign that I'm going to cover today. Anyway, so we'll do that. We'll have some Q&A at the end, depending on how much time is remaining. Now, as you guys know, right now, we're also in Kickstarter season, which means at a few different points along the way, I'll stop to promote the Kickstarter and tell you about some other events that are coming up. So anyway, that's our agenda for today. So as always, before we get into it, if you're tuning in now or you're watching the replay later, please like and subscribe. It really helps us dramatically to grow as a business. We're seeing if we can't get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer, and your little like, your thumbs up, and your comments and subscribing if you're not yet, that all really helps us. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Before I get into promoting the Kickstarter, I want to make sure that you know about what's happening at Nightlight this month. It's a busy month at Nightlight with the Kickstarter, so these things can kind of fall beneath the radar a little bit. Go to the events tab on the website, click on live talks. You will see that next Thursday night, December 18th, or is it next Thursday night, or is it 2 Thursdays from now? It's 2 weeks from now. On Thursday, December 18th, I'm giving a talk on the 11th house for my monthly webinar. If you've never learned about the 11th house outside of it meaning something like groups and communities, you need to come check this talk out. We're going to talk at length about why this was considered one of the houses of your best karma in this lifetime. Some of the subjectively best karma that we have as souls is often related to this house, and why. Why was that thought to be the case? We're going to talk about this house as something associated with hopes, wishes, dreams, aspirations, and a socially conditioned level of happiness that's so much bigger, all of these topics, than just groups of people, which is often the sort of modern reductionist meaning of the 11th house. So if that sounds interesting to you, register. We'll see you on Thursday evening, December 18th. You get the recording afterward if you can't attend live. Go to the events page, click on Silent Sundays. If you have not yet joined us for morning meditation on Sundays, our next one is December 14th at 10:30 a.m. Central Time. We're going to get together and do nothing. We literally just get together and be quiet. And then after a period of quiet time, you can call it meditation, you can call it prayer, you can call it just sitting quietly. We then have some time for reflections and insights and sharing. It has been a really lovely way to get together as a community. And for some people, helping you start the development of a spiritual practice, especially if you need a little community support, it helps to do it with other people. So this has been a really special gathering. It's totally free. Click on the join link and you can just join us through the Zoom meeting. This is something that one of the many things we do at Nightlight to try to make astrology and spirituality with astrology very accessible for people. Go to the events page, click on in-person events. And if you're in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, the Twin Cities area, on Saturday, December 20th from 6 to 8:30 p.m., we have a solstice gathering for a little movement, meditation, snacks, fellowship, community. It is also free. And that winter solstice gathering, you can RSVP for right here. It's at the New City Center in Minneapolis, the Grapevine Collective, 6 to 8:30 p.m. Hope to see some of you there. So on that note, what I want to do next is take you over to the Kickstarter campaign. Then I promise you we'll get rolling. So on the Kickstarter campaign, you're going to find the link to the campaign. Actually, let me grab the link right here. You're going to find the link to the Kickstarter campaign on the comments section of this post. You'll find it pinned to the top of the comment section. You'll also find it in the description of this video. I have just tagged the link into the live stream comments as well. So when you head over there, consider supporting this channel. We are trying to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve. You guys, I've been creating content daily for 12 years with Kickstarters. 13 for this is actually 13 because I started the year before that prior to doing a Kickstarter. So for 13 years now, daily astrological creative content has been like a spiritual practice for me. And I'm not kidding when I say that it has been daily and it has been for 13 years and I have not really missed a day. And that is my sadhana. This is my heart and soul contribution to the world in this lifetime, apparently. And the way that it works is to make sure that astrology is accessible for people, no paywalls, no subscriptions, all of the professional courses that we provide, all of the curriculum of all of our programs, and there's a ton of programming at Nightlight, all rooted in need-based, accessible pricing, scales, and models, because of the Kickstarter campaign. So at the end of the year, if you appreciate the heart and soul that goes into this to make this a spiritually substantive, astrologically insightful place, and it's part of your life and it means something to you, then please consider supporting us. This is how I earn my livelihood. It's how I support my wife and kids. It's part of how I support a staff of 12 people, including a full-time social media manager. There's about 3 hours worth of work that goes into every single day worth of content. And we are 7 days a week now, year round. So if this is a part of your life, please back it. Please support us. We need to get to 2,043 backers by New Year's Eve. As of the time that I'm making this, we're at 383 backers, which is a nice start, but we need to get to 400 by today to keep on track. So that means we need 17 people who are watching this to be like, yeah, it's my day to pitch in $5 or $10. But also when you pitch in, there's a ton of really cool rewards available. You can see them right here. They're all listed for you. Some really fun guided meditations that I've made this year that are new, inviting the silence and the oracle within, but also the Astrology of 2026. This is an 1.5 hour long talk that I created exclusive through the Kickstarter. It covers all of the major events of 2026. There are also, you can join in on the chapter by chapter release of my next book, which is there. Year ahead horoscope readings. This is going to be all of the major events of the year ahead for every single rising sign horoscope. You listen to it for whatever sign you want, but that as a bundle comes together when you donate. We have a whole bunch of master classes from previous years that are available at discounted rates. And then probably our best deal is going to be, there's some other readings you can check out too, but the best deal is going to be our master class, our guild membership, and our class pass bundles. All of those we have some brand new classes that are starting next year. And then all of our first year, second year, third year horary programs, all of those programs in ancient astrology go 50% all the way up to 70% off when you pick up the bundles. So at the bottom, you're going to find attend 1 Nightlight astrology course, attend 2, attend 3, and attend 4. And you can mix and match those with all of our programs, our masterclass, our guild, our horary, our year 1, 2, or 3 programs. So those are our best deals of the year, easily the best time to save if you want to study with Nightlight. Those class passes never expire. You could take 2 for yourself and gift 1 to a friend for Christmas. So they really are quite flexible. Anyway, so check those out. Thank you everybody for donating already. It means a lot to us. I'm going to put the link to the Kickstarter one more time into the comment section right now. I will come back around to promoting this after we've gone through some of the major signatures of horoscopes. So, all right. Now, let's get into this. First of all, let's take a look at the configuration of this full moon. Now, I'm going to also add in, just for right now, we're going to add back in the presence of a few other planets. I'll add back in Neptune as well here. And then I'm going to, one more thing I need to add is Uranus. Okay. So here's what we're unpacking today. It's our full moon in Gemini. So we'll be talking a bit about that. But what's really important is to notice the dignity chains that are associated with a big moment. That's always like next level work for understanding how one full moon is different from another. So I'm going to illuminate this now, and we're going to, there we go. All right. So let's start by just taking a look at the full moon is in Gemini. It's in the bound of Jupiter, and it's in the domicile of Mercury Hermes. Mercury, in the meantime, has just turned direct, just appeared as the morning star, is in the bound of Jupiter, and is about to hit Jupiter in a trine as it creates one last Grand Water Trine. So there's, first of all, Jupiter has a lot of power in the backdrop of this full moon. It's not something you would think of right away, but when we examine bound rulerships, for example, we see that this is the case. There's several planets in Sagittarius right now that also point to Jupiter. So this is a moment where there's a lot of power given to Jupiter in the space of the full moon, which is not, again, not intuitive. And there's a lot of power given to water because Mercury, the host of the full moon, is creating this final grand water trine. So let's watch how this plays out. If I advance this chart just a little bit, we're going to see that Jupiter comes into the trine with, or Mercury comes into the trine with Jupiter, and then immediately is going to be followed by the trine to Saturn. We're going to spread that out between now and Sunday. So let's back this up to today, Thursday, full moon. In the wake of the full moon, we get Friday into Saturday, Mercury trining Jupiter, and then trining Saturn. The moon will also be going through Cancer, perfecting that grand water trine at the same time over the next several days into the weekend. The other thing that happens, and this is sort of extra sneaky, is that as this grand water trine is perfecting, Mercury comes into one last opposition with Uranus. This is, the third one. We had one in direct motion, one in retrograde motion, now one final opposition to Uranus in direct motion again. And we've had a pretty Uranian last month with several planets, Mars, Venus, the Sun, all moving through the opposition to Uranus, plus Mercury's retrograde moving through it. There's been a lot of Uranian activity, you could say, in the midst of all of these grand water trines, which has given the grand water trines more of a signature of emotional upheaval or emotional, almost like a more chaotic emotional kind of quality to the astrology. So this full moon is really bringing together some of these signatures of water and Uranian upheaval behind the full moon. So what I want to do now to kind of illustrate what that might look like is to give you the I Ching reading that I worked with this morning. Okay, just get myself set up here. Okay, here we go. So when I cast the I Ching, I said, especially given that the full moon is connected to a Mercury that's just appeared as a morning star and is moving right into this grand water trine configuration, how should we think about this full moon in, say, the next 4 or 5 days in which all of this watery wave comes through and Mercury then opposes Uranus one final time? So the first hexagram that came back, and I'm going to put it up on the screen so that you can, if you want to, you could go look it up. Oh, here we go. There's this new thing that StreamYard is doing that's super annoying. Let me just get, okay, there we go. So hexagram 40 was the first hexagram that came back in my reading this morning. This hexagram is called Release of Tension, and I'm going to read you the oracle and the oracle text. This is from Benabel Wen's translation of the I Ching, which I've been raving about lately. Very excited to hopefully have her on the channel in the new year to talk about the I Ching and hopefully to turn some of you on to the I Ching and her work, because I think she's just fantastic. Anyway, when your endeavor has not been completed, do not procrastinate. Bring it to completion. I'm going to take this line by line and show you how this applies. So first of all, a full moon is a moment of karmic ripening or fulfillment of old stuff, of old promise, of old potential, of old stories, of old habits, of old patterns. They come into visible manifestation and you can see them, or they come to a point of releasing or of greater liberation or freedom or expression around the full moon. This hexagram is called Release of Tension. When I was working as a social worker in a home for people without homes in New York City who were in this form of housing who also all had similar diagnosis with mental emotional health. And that was basically like non-violent, non-aggressive forms of schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorders. And they were previously homeless and then had found home in this residence. So I was a social worker in that space. And I remember the doctors, they didn't know, that I secretly wear tinfoil hats and drink ayahuasca and like, they didn't know who they were sitting next to. They were sitting next to me. And I was listening to them talk about how, well, if there's anything to astrology, it's the fact that there are more decompensations mentally and emotionally around the full moons. And anyone who works in ERs know this, and the police know this, and the hospital workers know this. And my employees were all, my fellow, the employees at the building I worked at, my coworkers, were all talking about this. And I remember thinking, I wonder if there's anything to that. And sure enough, every month around the full moon, things got pretty wacky in terms of what are sometimes referred to as decompensations that clients would experience, like breakdowns, basically. But some of them, there was one resident in particular that I was kind of fond of, and he would always come to my art groups in the afternoon. And I remember, like, he just got a lot more like manic and creative, and he never had like decompensations, but I would note around the full moons that he would just be a lot, like there'd just be a lot happening for him, mentally, emotionally, and his sensitivity level was up. And I always thought it was interesting that folks who had a lot of trauma and maybe, just a different way of experiencing reality. In one paradigm, we might, we call it an illness. Certainly there was high levels of, there was a lot that these folks had to deal with. So I don't mean to suggest that, people who have mental health challenges are like just secret shamans or something. I don't, that kind of thinking is like too simplistic. But I will say that being among a population of people who were particularly sensitive to energy, I would say, I think it's fair to say that in my experience, the full moons were a lot. They ripened. So the first thing that I want to say about this is that at the time of a full moon, there's this like blossoming and this like everything's lifting and rising and getting bigger, and things that are unseen have a way of becoming visible. I think it's fascinating that the first line of this text says, when your endeavor has not been completed, do not procrastinate, bring it to completion. Think about it. If you're at a full moon moment, and we have a Mercury guiding that full moon moment that's just turned direct, that's just appeared as the morning star, that's going to hit a Grand Water Trine, and you're sitting on your hands like, I'm just not going to finish the shit that I'm supposed to be doing right now. You can see how this oracle would be a warning that at such a moment of fullness where there's a big signature in the sky of completion, the last Grand Water Trine, the last completion of these planets to one another, a full moon moment, and you're sitting there not acting and not completing, not following through energetically, you could be screwed. You could get yourself in trouble. So be careful of procrastinating around a moment that is ripe for completing something. Isn't that a really good piece of advice? I love that, because if there's anything I know about I have Mars and Gemini, if there's anything I know about Gemini over years of experience, it is that kind of playful, open, receptive, communicative, flexible, adaptable quality sometimes also doesn't know how to just complete something, say something definite, commit to something, follow through with something. Sometimes that's hard for Gemini. And that it's hard specifically because some of the things Gemini is best at aren't necessarily all about, committing and follow through and sort of Capricornian stuff. There's a reason why Capricorns and Geminis often conflict. Anyway, the point being that with this full moon averse to Mercury's place in Scorpio, and Mercury turning direct, appearing as the morning star in Scorpio, connecting with this Grand Water Trine, there's a way in which you could be not realizing that it's time to be done with something. It's time to finish it. It's time to complete it. And if you miss that moment, you're going to get flooded by the consequences of missing the aligned moment for completing something. That's the first line. There's lots. Let's keep going. When your endeavor has been completed, a prompt return to stability will bring you good fortune. Don't bask in the afterglow of glory. Go straight back to work. I love that. That's such a good line. Hey, look, when something does reach a point of completion, don't tell yourself about it. Keep it a secret, even to yourself, that something is done or over or has been completed. Don't pat yourself on the back for it. Just keep going, keep flowing right along. You notice that there was another hexagram that we looked at, which was 42, and it talked about sudden moments of expansion unexpectedly that might bring good fortune, but could also destabilize. That was Venus opposite Uranus from Scorpio to Taurus. That hexagram said, when good things happen and they kind of throw things, they throw a curveball at you, accept the good fortune, but see what you can do to get right back into a groove. Flow along. Don't get lost in a big moment, especially in that big moment when there's reason to feel a little celebratory. Things are going well, things are flowing along. There's a kind of peak moment where there's maybe a sense of fulfillment behind it. Some people will experience this, in other words, as a moment of fulfillment. But given the aversion between the full moon and Mercury in Scorpio completing the Grand Water Trine, a moment of completion or a sense of fulfillment emotionally could become a blind spot. That's the point. So when there is a big release of tension, thank you. Yes. Whew, thank you. That there's a blessing there. There's being in receipt of it. All good. But also just keep flowing right along, because this could be a moment that takes you off course, because a great sense of fulfillment or completion is something that you end up getting pulled off course by. So don't procrastinate, but also don't get pulled off course by completion. Don't bask in the afterglow of glory. Go straight back to work. Now, the next line, what you contemplate doing, proceed with. You will outsmart even the smart. You hunt rather than run. So here's another totally different take. And what I love about the I Ching is there's these like layers of information that all work around the core archetypes of yin and yang in the hexagram. So here's another piece of advice with the same hexagram that says, if you're thinking about doing something, go do it. This is a good moment where something that you're thinking about can be enacted and find support, especially if you're sort of, and I don't want this to sound like super egotistical, but if you've got a good plot line going in your head and you're sort of being clever, and maybe you're doing some investigating or some detective work, your wheels are turning, and you have a smart plan that's sort of cooking beneath the surface, this hexagram is sort of like an instruction to carry forth that plan, assuming that it's not a plan that's all about, vanity or greed or power or ego, right? Obviously, that's sort of implied in all of these texts. But if you're sort of cooking something up behind the scenes or below the surface, you're going to find that there is a smooth, like, runway from which to take off right now. And that's also the aversion between a full moon in Gemini that's very strategic, that's very mental, that has a lot of ideas, and something as deep and focused as Mercury turning direct as a morning star in Scorpio with a Grand Water Trine configuration. A lot of support for deeply thought of plans and ideas that can move forward strategically. It's a good time to be a hunter and to go from playful ideas to enacting the hunt, the ambition. Let's go do it. So nice, another nice line there. Sever ties with those who bring you sorrow. That's another interesting line, but it works really well. In the sign of Gemini, we have the moon reaching a point of fullness. The moon in Gemini loves playful, fun, uplifting, curious, stimulating connections with other people. Mercury in Scorpio is deep, probing, penetrating, intense emotionally. Connecting in this Grand Water Trine, you can see the aversion between the two being like, is this fun for you? Are these people or these situations or these environments mentally and emotionally fun, or do they bring a lot of pain and weightiness mentally and emotionally? The aversion between the two can be really good feedback right now about things that sort of drag you down mentally and emotionally versus those that lift you up. So pay attention to that, because that's living in the aversion between Moon and Mercury right now. In your endeavor, you encounter naysayers. Cut yourself loose from their hold over you. The untying of a knot, the unraveling of a complication. Redemption is recovery. Ooh, I like those lines. At the end here of the oracle text, it says, In your endeavor, you counter naysayers. Cut yourself loose from their hold over you. Can you feel that the moon in Gemini is like this sparkly set of magical thinking, magical ideas, playful plans for life? Mercury in Scorpio connecting in this big grand water trine is about emotional feedback loops. All trines, by the way, were connected with communities of like-minded people because they were all of the nature of Jupiter. And broadly speaking, Jupiter was about consensus, about the building of support and momentum through things outside of yourself that help you develop greater unity and wholeness. So it has an association with the 11th house and with communities of people. Jupiter rejoiced in the 11th house. So it's interesting to me that this full moon with Mercury heading into a grand water trine is like, do you have a lot of ideas, plans, the sparkly parts of you that are not receiving the right kind of social acceptance or support? Because, again, it's sort of like cut loose from those who bring you sorrow. It's also about not letting people tell you what may or may not work, or what's fun or interesting, or what plans you should or shouldn't be attempting to achieve, because their feedback is just not the right kind. Cut yourself loose from their hold over you. The untying of a knot, the unraveling of a complication. I love Mercury in Scorpio as a morning star turning direct, just saying, I now see things for what they are. I have penetrated into the heart of the matter. I have seen the truth. And with this grand water trine configuration, I am now going to unravel myself from a complication, a burden, an emotional complexity that just isn't worth it. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. Is that how the saying goes? I think that's how it goes. All right, here's the next part. A thunderstorm, release of tension, liberation. So this hexagram, literally, here's another text that I'll just pull up on my phone really quick. A thunderous cloudburst shatters the oppressive humidity. So this hexagram has thunder over water in the trigrams, which is an image of a thunderstorm. So you can feel how it seems like it's just a kind of playful, harmless full moon in Gemini, but behind it is this thunderstorm of water, with Mercury, a morning star, direct in Scorpio. A thunderstorm, release of tension, liberation. There's also a really interesting line here that talks about liberation in the midst of a thunderstorm coming specifically because a wise person knows how to forgive other people. So we're talking on one side of the oracle about severing ourselves from ties with people who bring sorrow, naysayers. Cut yourself loose from people who hold negative power over you. One of the ways that seems to be instructed in this hexagram in a subsequent line is to literally forgive other people for their shortcomings. That doesn't mean you have to stay in a relationship with them necessarily, but it's talking about one of the easiest ways to experience liberation emotionally and to feel free to go forward in your own direction is, rather than feeling entangled and held back by other people, maybe people you have to live with, maybe with family members you can't just turn your back on. You have to just forgive them internally. You have to release them from the obligations you have of them in your own mind. Well, I thought they were going to be this way. I thought they were going to be supportive. Or, one of the things I've learned over time, because at least 5-6 times a week, there are shitty comments in the YouTube section we have to curate toward other people, toward us, whatever. And I have learned that if I just say to myself, like, anyone who's taking the time to be that cruel and mean can't be feeling very good. I can't imagine that anyway. So I'm going to try to find that space of compassion and forgiveness and not get triggered, but just kind of let it go. That liberates me. You know what I mean? Like, that's my strategy for liberation. A sage in the midst of a thunderstorm finds reliefs, just like the thunderstorm releases that creative energy that's pent up, that anger or tension, by forgiving other people. So what a powerful moment where, the full moon in Gemini is like, Gemini, you don't think of Gemini as like holding grudges, or, Gemini is so loose and free, especially mentally, emotionally, that it doesn't seem like something that would need to be done. But with Mercury in a fixed water sign as the ruler, the easiest way out of some kind of mental block might be to release something we're holding on to emotionally. Gains arising from the southwest. The field is fertile. Sign of the bull. Without a destination, do not go. Return to the point of origin. With a destination, go forth with swift motion and speed. There is urgency. Early mornings are auspicious. Old ways are favorable. What you are going through, one who came before you went through it too. They are the old ways, and they will guide you until you are set free. The old oracle bone script for one of the characters is that of a man holding or venerating the moon, hands lifted in prayer toward the moon. Another interpretation of the script image is that of a person working judiciously under the light of the moon, suggesting tenacity, perseverance, and dedication to one's work. So just in summary, the way I interpret the last portion of that text without going line for line is that one of the easiest ways to get through a difficult space is to look at what successful people in the past that you admire. It doesn't matter if you don't admire them and the way they've lived and what they've achieved and accomplished, then what is it going to mean to you to try to emulate them? But for people who you really do admire, who have achieved things or gotten through things, or whose character is admirable to you, how have they handled moments like this? How would they get through it? Whether it's an ancestor, a friend, a hero, a mythological figure, a deity, what can you look to right now that says like this is the thing to emulate, or the person or path to emulate that will get you through a trying moment and will therefore be a part of how you liberate yourself or how you get through a stuck situation and find that release and relief. So what I love about this is that there's a lot here that has to do with strategies of intelligence that we can call upon that are outside of ourselves, and the I Ching is one of them. The I Ching would literally be an old way that is favorable. What are you going through? Who came before you who went through it too? There are old ways, and they will guide you until you experience that liberation. The interesting at the oracle bone script saying that there's a man holding or venerating the moon, hands lifted in prayer toward the moon. Remember that the moon is the ancestors, and the moon is the earth and the intelligence that's come before us in the form of memory. The moon was the keeper of memories. So someone working hard under the light of the moon and venerating it is someone sort of saying like, there's a secret depth of knowledge and wisdom that's come before me that I can call on to get through this, or to complete something, or to release something. I love that because a full moon in Gemini with Mercury and Scorpio says there is a smart way to do things right now that will help you forgive or release or complete something, or be free of something that's been bothering you. How do you flow along through it? All right, well, there were two lines that were changing, and I'm going to read you those lines. Such a nice one. Let me make sure I've got it. Yeah. So the first line that's changing is the third line. The actual line, according to the method I follow for which line to read in the case of multiple changing lines, will take us to line 5. But I want to read you the first line anyway. The first changing line is line 3, and it reads, burdened with carrying the sack, steering a wagon, attracting thieves, remorse, a sense of loss. To prevent a regrettable outcome, endeavor for corrective measures before proceeding. Adjust your perspective, otherwise there will be remorse. The narrative told in this third line is that of a porter. While most porters travel by foot, here is one who has become quite well-to-do and thus reaches just a little beyond his means to travel by wagon, as if he were one of the wealthier merchants who travels by wagon. Here is one displaying wealth in a manner that will attract envy and thievery. Also, the line suggests one whose head is in the clouds and is shirking responsibility. Don't take shortcuts, it says. Under no circumstances should you take an easy way out. Be more frugal, be more thoughtful, be more careful. Anticipate potential difficulties, and don't act or behave like someone that you're not. Wow, those are powerful pieces of advice. I love this because think about the disconnect between a full moon in Gemini and host Mercury in Scorpio again. That disconnect says if you're acting sort of frivolously and you're like, oh, look at me, I'm the wealthy merchant of town. that disconnect between Mercury in deep Scorpio and the moon in Gemini will show up as someone who steals your shit. Because the idea is that your ego is going to have something undermine it because you're being too playful and oblivious. And so the sort of playful, oblivious nature of moon in Scorpio might need to have its attention drawn back to something deeper and more substantive that it's too head in the clouds, playful, unserious, or naive about to see. If the ego gets even a little out of control, which is, I mean, Gemini is like a youthful, playful sign, but there's something that Mercury in Scorpio says you can't, there's something much deeper, much more substantive, much weightier that is at stake right now if you're being reckless or sort of too carefree and easy and loose. That could be with money, it could be with ego. Something will come and kind of sideswipe you. So again, feel that Gemini Scorpio connection, which by the way is so classic in Scorpio Gemini relationships. The Gemini's like, Scorpio, you're not playful enough, you're not having any fun. And Scorpio's like, oh, sorry, I'm just like broody. And then on the other hand, the Scorpio to the Gemini will be like, you're so playful, but you're missing all of your shadows, or you're so playful, but you're missing the fact that the people you're hanging out with are actually, they're foxes in a chicken coop. Like the Scorpio has an awareness of things that the Gemini might miss, and the Gemini has an awareness of the playful lightness that the Scorpio might miss. But right now, with the host of the full moon as Mercury, direct, heavy, morning star, Grand Water Trine in Scorpio, it's saying, don't be too light or you will miss something. And that something will steal the shit right out of your wagon because you've been driving it along carelessly. All right, that's the first line. The second line is line 5. The sage releases the tension, auspicious omen. The sage wins the trust of the commoners. Now, much of this text is meant for guiding people who have responsibility in leadership positions originally. So when it says the sage and commoners, it's really talking about like people that are in your care as a leader that's supposed to emulate the way of heaven. Wise, just, fair, good, noble, right? Like all the good qualities of leadership. But you can take the same language and apply it to our lives, our internal dynamics, any space in our life. It doesn't have to be one where there's a literal sage and a literal commoner. Those can be metaphors. So think about the sage in you right now as the wise part of you who, if the sage is driving the vessel right now, the vehicle, in the right way, is going to lead your life in the right direction. The sage wins the trust of the commoners would be a way of saying any influence you have is going to take things, yourself or other people that you have some relationship with, in the right direction if you act and behave in the right way. So the sage releases the tension. Auspicious omen, the sage wins the trust of the commoners. Your endeavor serves others. Success and gains prognosticated for the matter at hand. The fifth line narrates a story of a village in distress. The sage comes and solves the problem. The villagers are grateful and pledge their faith and loyalty in the sage. Winning the villagers' support will bring the sage a great advantage in a future matter. So here we have this idea of reciprocity. Look, if I help you because I have some intelligence, some resources, some insight, and I use that to be of benefit to other people. Remember, think of that Grand Water Trine in the background. Intelligence in service to others, intelligence that connects meaningfully and helpfully with other people. If I use my abilities, my intelligence, my insight in the service of others, they find reason to trust me. And that trust will come back in reciprocity in the future. There will be a way in which my being helpful toward other people's will eventually help me. How? I can't quite say. Right now, it's my turn to help, but by doing that help, later, I'll be helped. It's such a simple teaching. But right now, for example, the idea that you would wall yourself off from others or be stingy rather than generous, those are bad ideas right now. The more receptive and thoughtful and sharing and caring, whatever ideas, insights you have, maybe, I would never say unsolicited advice is a good idea, but wherever there's a natural opening to be that sage helping that village in distress, do it, because there's some sense right now that's going to connect you to allies and to some kind of reciprocal dynamic that you can't see right now, but in the future will be helpful. Wow, so beautiful. An alternative perspective on the fifth line is to interpret, and there's a couple of the ideograms, as the unprincipled, the anti-hero, or your adversary. From this perspective, this line would be saying that you're being called to help someone that you perhaps even dislike. Win the trust and loyalty of those you dislike, and by doing so, you pave your own path to success and future gains. Sometimes in life, and I think this is the aversion between Gemini and Scorpio as well, we think to ourselves, I could be helpful to someone right now, but I don't particularly see eye to eye with them ideologically, or there's something about them that I have some reservations or hesitations about. This line is an invitation to set those things aside and to be generous, even to people that you don't see eye to eye with completely, or that you have some reservations about, or even some open or active animosity toward. Forgive. Remember the beginning of the hexagram. Forgive. Pardon other people. Even doing good to people that you don't like right now releases and liberates karmic entanglements, which in the future are going to provide gains that you can't even imagine. It's such a good time to forgive, pardon, release, help people you don't necessarily see eye to eye with. So if you carefully think about all of these things, you can feel the guidance and advice and the archetypal situation mirroring the full moon with that host Mercury in the Grand Water Trine. I hope that this has been a useful meditation. Let me turn to the comment section and see how you're doing. All right. What I'm going to do next is we're going to do horoscopes next. Let me just get my screen set up here. Remember that another reason that there's such releasing power in all of this is not just the Grand Water Trine. It's the fact that the host Mercury will, at the end of this Grand Water Trine, also oppose Uranus. There's that final liberating release behind all of this. So it really is quite a sequence. All right. How's everybody doing? Good? All right. Well, what I'm going to do really quickly is plug the Kickstarter again, and then we will head over to the real-time clock, and we'll get our horoscopes. We'll get our horoscopes on. All right. So we have been live for an hour, and here's where my Cancerian powers of guilt trip come in. We have been live for an hour, and we have had one backer. We have 487 people joining us live right now. So my call is we need more backers. We need more of you who love this, who say, I get something out of this. This is thoughtful, interesting, helpful for my experience of the astrology, to head over to the Kickstarter and pledge to support the channel in the year ahead. We have had literally one backer in an hour, and we can do better. I know we can do better than that. I put the link into the chat stream. Head over there, a $5 donation, a $10 donation. All of it really helps. There's a ton of really great rewards available when you donate. You can find the link in the comment section, pinned to the top in the description of the video. And here's what it looks like when you get there. You support, you make your pledge, you go down and pick any of the rewards that you see here. And you're going to just click on there, and that will allow you to pick up any of the rewards when you donate. There's a ton of really good stuff available. Check it out. Scroll through those rewards. If you have any questions about any of the rewards, you can pop it into the chat as we're going along here, or email us info@nightlightastrology.com. Okay. Well, thank you in advance, and really appreciate all of you who've already pitched in toward our goal this year. We're making good pace, but to get to 2,043 backers, we need solid every day. We need people who say, hey, I love this. I'm going to support this community. I'm going to support this work. Content creators are people who deserve to earn a living too. If that is a value of yours, then, we really appreciate it. Okay. On that note, got some horoscopes. I'm really excited for these. I think I've got some really good points to bring up for all of your horoscopes. Let's go. Mary says, I hope you get to your goal, Adam. I do too. Thank you. Really appreciate it. And if you've already donated, thank you for that. Thank you. A lot of really nice comments in here. We love it. Oh, look, a troll. We'll just, sometimes we gotta kick people right out. What's your method for determining the changing line? Yeah, so where is the program I use when I input it does it for me. I use ichingonline.net, and I will take whatever the coins say and like manually input it, and then it gives me the changing line formula. But you can find it in Alfred Wong's Complete I Ching has the line method outlined in the beginning. So let's see here. Yeah, so if there are two moving lines, one yin and the other yang, consult only the yin moving line. So he has 7 different points for how to handle different scenarios with moving lines. That is one of the most consistent, repeated traditional methods of determining which line to focus on. So his book is a great one. That's I know my program uses that one too. So yeah. Backing as we speak. Oh, thank you. That is just awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah. Scorpio to Gemini. Sorry, I'm just like so broody. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Let's get into your horoscopes, and then we'll do some Q&A. All right, here we go. So what I'm going to be doing in these horoscopes is I'm going to be outlining for you the whole sign house of Gemini and the aversion to Mercury in its accompanying house as the ruler. It's the connection between these two houses right now that is at the heart of how I've written the horoscopes today, okay? So that's what we're doing. Let's get into it. We're going to start with Aries. The full moon is in your 3rd house. Mercury is turning direct as morning star in Scorpio in the 8th. The 3 things to watch for are this. 1, I want you to think about a breakthrough that can happen in communication, learning, or something strategic or logistical. A moment of clarity in your immediate environment, in your mind or your psychology, that helps you finally name something or see something that's been hidden. The reason for that is the connection between the 3rd and the 8th. So when there is a shift or change in mental, psychological, learning, or communicative dynamics, because you see something that you couldn't see or name something that before was sort of unconscious, that's a 3rd, 8th house kind of connection in this moment that I'd be looking for if I was an Aries. Number 2, let's call it a new layer or a newly revealed layer or level under the surface of intimate, financial, or psychological dynamics or entanglements. So as Mercury appears in the 8th house connected to the moon in the 3rd, I wonder about mental, psychological, emotional, or communicative dynamics, specifically in relationships that you're starting to see or hold in a different light, that are coming to light in a new way. This is going to help you understand someone or help you feel more understood, or it articulates something that has been difficult to articulate because there's a mental and emotional component to it that have a hard time getting on the same page. Number 3 would be reconciling personal desire with necessary surrender. So the karma-driven urge in the third house with the Mercury in the eighth is to connect with other people. But there's a certain level at which the most meaningful forms of connection that you can possibly have may not be available to you right now because of things that you need to change about yourself that are also connected to who you choose to be in relationships with. So when I say reconciling personal desire with some kind of necessary surrender, what I mean is it's like, this is what you want, and this is why it's not working. This is why you can't quite achieve that feeling you're looking for. So you either need to shift or change your desires to be more realistic, or you need to change something about yourself, or you need to change something about relationships so that there's more mental and emotional satisfaction. This is a matter of karmic entanglement mentally and emotionally that's being cleared. All right, so those are my takes on Aries. Let's go to Taurus. So for Taurus, the full moon is in your second house. That's an Artha house, while Mercury's direct in the seventh. So we've got the second and seventh. These all are aversion. So there's something that they don't see from each other. Three things to watch for Tauruses. One would be an illuminating moment around finances, resources, or personal value. This could be something that it clarifies itself, and it tells you this is what you have, this is what you're in possession of, or this is what you need that you somehow lack. The reason for that is that the seventh house Mercury has to do not just with relationships, but with deeper levels of mental and emotional happiness and satisfaction. That's why it's called the Kama house in Indian astrology. It's just like, what makes me deeply happy mentally and emotionally? That's a Mercury in Scorpio in the seventh kind of exploration. Well, that is being tied to this full moon around finances, resources, let's call it personal value, what I have or want or possess. So a very illuminating moment around finances, resources, and what is providing happiness or keeping you from happiness mentally and emotionally in relation to things like money or finances. The second thing that I have for Taurus is a relationship conversation or truth surfaces. As Mercury is appearing in the seventh, turning direct as the morning star, ruling the moon in the second house, it could be that there is a deeper level of insight or honesty or sharing or clarifying something that's happening in an interpersonal relationship, a marriage, a dating life. Now, it could be that there is some connection that is there between happiness in relationships and things like money, the conversation around money, values, resources, and intimacy, desires, and relationship could be happening at the same time. And then third on my list would be negotiating material stability with relational desire. So there's a place in our life where we need material security and income and a feeling of happiness materially that's connected to what I have, what do I possess. But then there's also a layer of happiness that's connected to, intimacy and emotional connections with other people. This is one of those full moon dynamics where it could be like, well, I'm falling in love with someone who doesn't have as much money as I do, or I'm falling in love with someone who there's a significant socioeconomic difference in our backgrounds or how we were raised or what we have or possess or what kinds of things we value materially. So there's some negotiation right now between material values and emotional, interpersonal, sexual, or relational values and desires. So just watch for those things communicating if you're a Taurus right now. Let's move along to Gemini. A personal revelation, or first of all, full moon in the first house, with Mercury direct in the sixth. I would say first and foremost that because the full moon is in your first house and Mercury is turning direct in the 6th, it may be that for a little while now, you've been doing some very deep work on yourself, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, to improve your mental health, to improve the mind-body connection. This could be a moment where you're just really starting to feel healthier or happier because you put in some work in the past couple of months. This could also be about just illuminating who you want to be in this moment and getting clear about what kind of work or sacrifice it's going to take to become that person. Any kinds of clarifications around work, health, daily routines, daily work habits, and who you are in relation to them. A lot of first, 6th house conversations go like this. Life requires work, sacrifice, effort. I get that. I know I'm not going to avoid the difficulties of a job. Even the best job in the world would probably at some points not be super enjoyable. So I get that. But there has to be at least some sense that what I'm doing is connected to who I am, my gifts, my abilities, my nature. So questions about true nature and work and sacrifice are connecting right now, or some disconnect is being illuminated. Finally, aligning purpose with practice. If you want to be yourself, again, it may require certain kind of work or sacrifice. Well, I'm a really smart person. I know that I am. I know that I have the potential to be really smart. It was like, well, then let's say let's just use astrology since it's a thing that a lot of people listening are interested in. I know I could be a good astrologer. That's great. You probably could. You're probably tapping into some real authentic sense of dharma that you have connected to this topic. That doesn't mean you still don't have to read a shitload of books. Doesn't mean you don't have to look at a lot of charts, work with clients, go to school, find some mentors, find community. You're going to have to put in the work. This Mercury in the 6th won't take any BS about sort of fanciful images or fantasies or wishes about who you are unless there's some, deep commitment to becoming it, to putting in the work, to, putting the sacrifice into the fire, so to speak. So watch for that conversation to be alignment of purpose and practice. All right. So these are some things for Geminis. All right, let's go to Cancer. For Cancers, the full moon is in the 12th with Mercury turning direct in Scorpio in the 5th. It's a really interesting connection. First of all, the full moon in the 12th can make things that you are unconscious about or that have been hidden suddenly visible. Now, I've seen this happen in some really bizarre ways between the 12th and the 5th. Let me give you a mundane example just so you can see. So let's say that you're a parent, you're a mom, and you find out that your kid's been doing something, having some misbehavior pattern at school. And it's been there for a while, but this is the first you're hearing about it. That would be a full moon in the 12th with Mercury direct in Scorpio in the 5th. Something that I was unaware of as a parent that was in a blind spot is being drawn to my attention with respect to one of my children or my parenting style. My kid's telling me, hey, this thing you've been doing for a while, it's really been hurting my feelings. So anything in the 12th that's coming to surface through the 5th is like a kind of creative feedback that you're getting about something that's unseen or invisible. Even putting pen to paper and trying to access the unconscious through the creative act of stream of consciousness writing would be appropriate for these two spaces. It's about trying to connect something invisible through something creative and tangible, emotionally and creatively. This could also be about understanding invisible connections in yourself, your own health, your own body, and starting to understand where that's coming from in terms of how you've participated in creating it. The 5th house is a creative house. The 5th house in connection to the 12th is, what am I unconsciously creating? So think about that. Hidden truths or unconscious patterns that become visible through a kind of creative mirroring. Any kind of creative, romantic, or child-related insights surfacing. If you suddenly become aware of something you can do creatively, for fun, romantically, to be a better partner, and you go, why haven't I been doing that? Now I realize I can, and look at how easy it would be to make my partner a little bit happier just by doing this thing that they like or whatever. That would be very 12th house, 5th house. Any kind of insight around creativity. that has to do with the unconscious would be appropriate here. And then any kind of releasing of old patterns so that a new expression of joy, creativity, or purpose can emerge. So let's say you're like, well, I'm the kind of person who I'm starting to learn an instrument, but I'm really shy and insecure. This is maybe the opportunity to get together with some friends and they say, hey, show me how you're doing with that drum you've been practicing. You pull it out, you start playing it, and you go, oh, wow, I'm overcoming a fear. I'm getting over an insecurity right now by showing something of myself creatively that I've been very insecure about. So the opportunity to face fears and personal inadequacies through creative activities right now is also really profound. There's a lot of healing there. You can release a lot of old stuff right now so that greater joy, creativity can flow outwardly and not feel nervously pent up. All right. Let's go to Leo. For Leo, we've got the full moon in the 11th with Mercury turning direct in the 4th. So my 3 things to watch for are, first of all, just a peak moment socially or collectively. That peak moment is the full moon in the 11th, clarity around friendships, group endeavors. And also the 11th house has this broader meaning of our aspirations, hopes, wishes, and dreams as they can only exist and be manifested in some kind of social container. So for example, whenever I say I want Nightlight to be a school recognized as equitable and open to people of different backgrounds socioeconomically, and that's the dream or aspiration, to be known and seen and appreciated and loved in the astrological industry because of this good thing we provide. That's a very 11th house kind of aspiration. Or even if I said, I want my business to be successful and recognized as one of the more successful astrology businesses, something like that. If you have a little shop in a neighborhood and you say, I want my shop to be like a glowing part of the community, people say, I love that store. That's an 11th house kind of dream or aspiration. You see how it can only be identified in a collective or social context, but it's a wish and a hope and a kind of happiness that we want. That's the 11th house. So all of that in mind, right now, for Leos, it's like getting clarity about what your aspirations are. What are your dreams? What are your wishes or visions socially and collectively, professionally even? But number 2 on my list would be a deeper emotional insight that is sort of connected to what you're seeking socially. So let's just say, for example, that you grew up in a family that said you're not enough unless you're socially prestigious. Well, this is going to be a lot more complicated then, because the dreams, goals, aspirations, social networking you're doing for success might be meeting with the old pain or trauma of feeling like you're not enough unless you achieve or accomplish those things. So connections between internal, emotional, private, family, ancestral dynamics, and the way that those are connected to, in a healthy or unhealthy way, your social dreams, aspirations, professional ambitions, that's where the communication is. This could also be a moment where you're simply going like, I don't know what the right balance is between wanting to be like a parent or a mom and wanting to be achieving something socially or professionally. Finally, on my list here are balancing social desires and activities with need for inner privacy and grounding. The social butterfly of Gemini in the 11th is not quite the same as the internal, deep, private, and probably more interpersonal space of Mercury and Scorpio in the 4th. What are the hidden emotional or psychological dynamics within groups or social situations? And as well as, what is the difference between being very active or busy socially and having a well-defined, well-resourced, private, inner emotional life? So, alrighty, let's move along to Virgo. So with Virgo, full moon is in the 10th with Mercury turning direct in the 3rd. So the full moon's in your professional house. Mercury's direct in your 3rd house, a place of mind and psychology, learning. So 3 things to watch for. Just that full moon crystallizing here could be about career or public milestones, career achievements, things crystallizing or reaching a place of peaking or culminating professionally or in the workplace, something becoming visible in the workplace that has some history behind it. Now, the complicated dynamic with Mercury in the third could be that there are unseen or hidden dynamics or gossip or things existing below the surface that you are becoming aware of mentally, emotionally, psychologically. You're seeing more of what's behind the scenes or what's hidden or what's secretive in the workplace and having to figure out what to do about it. How to reconcile one level of reality from another with respect to relational, emotional, human dynamics that are sort of behind the scenes or not as visible. That would be really super common right now for Virgos. This may also have to do with, your outward goals or reputation or identity versus the internal psychological dynamic. So any amount of like super calculated maneuvering and plotting and scheming, you want to be very careful of. Like trying to figure out how you can achieve or accomplish something through a lot of covert, like scheming or strategizing, how to get ahead, how to convince people of something or persuade people of something or get something you want. It could be really easy right now for Virgos to be cooking something up because they don't feel like they're worth enough to simply say what they want or ask for what they want or ask for help. So I would be very careful of, sort of like subtly trying to manipulate or control situations too much. Also, aligning professional clarity with everyday communication patterns. So the third house, it might be that there's a new set of skills or ability or some new part of yourself that you want to cultivate or develop in a direct connection with how you're being seen or how you want to show up. So, when you get clear about your professional direction or your professional skills, and at the same time, you kind of go, okay, like what do I need to develop within myself, mentally, emotionally, my skill set to show up or achieve or accomplish what I want to in the workplace. Sometimes you're going to see this happen when someone realizes they want to take an additional training course or change directions professionally or shift to a different department or something like that. All right, let's move along to Libra. So the full moon's in your ninth with Mercury turning direct in the second. The first thing that I would watch for here would be a breakthrough in belief, learning, or life direction as it's guided by your, like philosophy, religion, spirituality, or spiritual or philosophical values. The full moon here just places a real emphasis on what you believe and how it guides your life, what you're learning and how it guides your life. But then part two of this is that the beliefs are coming through connection to things like values, money, material priorities, expenses, income, business, possessions, and what you want materially that will make you feel secure, bring a degree of happiness. All of us are material beings who have to deal with the material world and material energies. So what's the connection between things like money and assets and your values materially and the beliefs that you have and how they're evolving, how you're learning, how you're growing spiritually, how you're developing as a seeker. So money and belief, money and philosophy, money and wisdom, things like that are, and there's a potential because of the aversion for them to be sort of disconnected right now. So you want to be careful of any kind of unconscious way that the two areas aren't communicating with each other. I would also say integrating vision with practicality. So the ninth house is a Dharma house. The second house is an Artha house. You can have a development of your beliefs and learning, important teachers and mentors, subjects like astrology that are important to your life that are worth cultivating and developing. But it's important that there be a practical material world application of your beliefs, that they translate into, like, we don't want to leave our house, go into the busy marketplace of an ancient world, set up our shop, and have zero connection to our faith, our temples, our gods and goddesses, until the shop is over, we've left the market and we go home, because that's like a dissociation between faith and business. The business world, the material world, is not necessarily the same as the temple world. They are different. And trying to make them one and the same often leads people to saying things like, well, to be truly spiritual, you have to renounce the material world and money and stuff. It's just crazy. But at the same time, if there's zero connection between your business world, the marketplace, your life as a merchant or someone with a skill or a trade or a profession, and your beliefs, then you're also in trouble. So what's that conversation like right now for Libras? That's at the heart of it. All right, let's go on to Scorpios. So for Scorpio, the full moon is in your 8th and Mercury's turning direct in your 1st. This is really powerful for Scorpios because there is a kind of realization that can be taking place right now around shared resources, deep emotional bonds, psychological entanglements, and that liberation is the full moon in the 8th. But you can, number 2 on my list is you can have a liberation from karmic entanglements that is tied to personal clarity and self-definition. When you say, I see exactly why I've gotten into these kinds of soul contracts or karmic entanglements with other people, because I keep doing this kind of thing, or I keep behaving like this when that's not my real self, or, so that sense of personal clarity, personal illumination tied to freeing yourself or liberating yourself from unhealthy karmic entanglements. That's the really cool potential of these two planets. So a culmination or realization around shared resources, deep bonds, psychological entanglements. Number 2, personal clarity or self-definition moment that helps you cut through the fog and get clear about these bonds and entanglements. And then 3 would be transformative self-understanding. Moksha is freedom or liberation in the 8th house. Dharma is the 1st house. There is a tie right now between what you free yourself from, what you disentangle yourself from, and how you transform personally to be more of your authentic self. This could have something to do with money dynamics, relationship dynamics, emotional soul contracts with other people in your life, any kind of people. But it all leads back to, I'm not going to be my truest, deepest, happiest self unless I explore these dynamics and free myself from any of them that really are not healthy, that don't reflect my true nature. All right, let's go on to Sagittarius. So for Sagittarius, the full moon is in the 7th house, which is a Kama house, a place of love and relationships, while Mercury's direct in the 12th. You can guess where this is going. There are the potential for culminating moments of fulfillment, completion, resolution, peak moments in relationships. However, with Mercury direct in the 12th, number 2 on my list would be a hidden layer of motivation, fear, longing, desire, things that are hidden or unconscious or subconscious that are needing to be looked at or brought up right now in relationship to this peak moment in your intimate relationships. So think of it like this. This is about learning what your partner really thinks about something, or learning what your partner has really been doing behind your back. That would be a terrible thing, but that would fit with this one. Or it's about learning who, maybe more authentic, like, this is really me, this is really you. Let's be really real about things. We've been scared to show each other. Let's be more vulnerable. Let's be more open and honest. But also, where are the patterns of mental and emotional disease or conflict coming from in your life with other people? Just awareness of that. And also seeing the desires of your heart in light of unconscious patterning. The 7th house is always about how we seek heart-centered connection with other people. The 12th house about unconscious patterning. So what is the unconscious patterning relative to how we seek heart-centered connection with others that keeps us from it or that enhances it? All right, Capricorn. So the full moon is in your 6th with Mercury direct in your 11th. So anytime we have that full moon moment of culmination and completion in the sixth, there can be significant breakthroughs around health. If you've been working on difficult health patterns, this is a moment where you might find some relief or completion and greater health. But also hard work that pays off. If you've been chopping wood and carrying water, you might notice that there's some harvesting of hard work that you're receiving the benefits of. Any kind of obligations that you have had, you might find that they're being fulfilled so that duties are lessened and liberation is more possible. However, with Mercury direct in the 11th, part 2 is that there may be insights right now about friendships or group dynamics or long-term goals or dreams that are intimately tied to your daily work, your daily effort, your daily sacrifices. So, for example, if you're realizing, if this is a moment of completion or of recognition for hard work done, but you're realizing that you don't, the social validation you're receiving, you don't really care about. For example, let me give you just a super simple example. I one time had an astrology reading with Stephen Forrest when I was a pretty young astrologer, and I was starting off in my career, and he gave me this piece of advice. He said, I'm just summarizing it. He said, basically, you may find at times that people will, like people in the greater astrological sphere will tell you that you're doing a good job, but it may not always be the people that you really care about in terms of what they think. It's not that you don't appreciate being liked, but it's important to make sure that you're liked by the kind of people that you like. That was something he said to me. And that's really interesting that you're liked by the kind of people you like. And he was talking about, I think it was a South Node in Aquarius at my midheaven or something, in the North Node in Leo. So he was like, you want to be liked by the kind of people that you like. This is the same in this horoscope, right? You're putting in a lot of work and you might be realizing the completion or achievement of things. But if it's hollow in terms of the people that are validating you or the kind of feedback or validation or achievement you're achieving, and it's like, well, yeah, I'm achieving some success, but not really that I find super substantive or actually, validating. Well, that's a problem, because then you're putting work into the wrong people or the wrong places, or you're looking for attention from the wrong people. It's like in high school. Here's a super simple example. You work really hard to fit in with a group of people that once you fit into, you realize, you know what? I kind of thought they were jerks to begin with. And I'm realizing they are jerks, So sometimes it takes that, though. I mean, how many movies are there where the kid tries to be popular, he gets popular, and then he realizes that all the popular people suck, and why was he looking for their attention anyway? I would be careful about something like that if I was, Capricorn right now. Finally, it is important that daily discipline not be done without greater goals, visions, or dreams. And right now, there is an opportunity to really refine and sharpen your understanding of what, if anything, all of the work and labor you do is achieving or accomplishing. Because if it's not doing anything, if it's not moving toward greater dreams, hopes, and wishes, what the hell are you doing? That's this kind of full moon. Now, that doesn't mean that it's easy to. I mean, a lot of us have to work jobs that we would just describe as drudgery. But then at the very least, this can be like, well, if that's the material portion of my life and I'm just chopping wood and carrying water, then I better be cultivating some other areas of my life that can feed that part of me that needs dreams and wishes and aspirations. Because if nothing in my life is requiring sacrifice, effort, or work that I actually believe in as a dream or hope or wish, then I will progressively feel sicker and more disillusioned. And legitimately, I'll start becoming more and more full of crap. The reason for that is that we have to start convincing ourselves that our life has some greater purpose that we're living for, when it doesn't, because we're not living for it, because we're not doing anything to build anything toward what we actually want or desire or wish for. And so then we have to live with lies, deceptions, deceits, little things we tell ourselves about what we're doing that's not even really true. So having something substantive that we actually believe in, even if it's small, even if it's like, hey, I'm getting better at a hobby, that's something. Anyway, all right, let's go on We're going to move to Aquarius. So for Aquarius, the full moon is in your 5th, Mercury's direct in the 10th. So first of all, just a peak moment in creativity. That 5th house is a very creative, very romantic house. It's about the creative dharma that we hold in us, which is it's so hard to quantify, because creative dharma is, on one level, it could be academic, it could be romantic and social and relational, it could be creative. It has to do with, it's like when you find like flow states. Everyone knows what it's like to get into a flow state, dance or music or a guided meditation. You get into a flow state. The 5th house is like the soul's flow state. It's a place where when we connect to it, there is a stream of self-expression that is coming from the heart. That's why it can be found in romantic contexts, or with children and creating children in the world, or raising children, or being childlike, or it can also be connected to the arts, performance. But it's not just a house of art or something like that. So for Aquarians, there's a peak moment right now that's trying to illuminate where your heart is actually at. The disconnect is with Mercury turning direct in the house of career. So while there's this peak moment in the house of creativity, the subtext, part 2, is a professional or vocational realization, helping you try to cut through confusion. Creativity and career are a disconnect for most of us. Even me, I get to do something creative that I like doing every single day, which is a real blessing. Because talking to so many people, I know that that's a big struggle in the world. So I feel very fortunate. However, it's still today, the question of my morning was literally how do I make this creatively connected and enjoyable to do horoscopes when it's not the natural thing that feels the most fulfilling to me, compared to, say, the first half of this talk where I was talking about the I Ching and the signatures archetypally. A lot more easy for me to be in that flow. I have to work and grind a little bit more to find flow in this kind of format. That's just part of it. All of us have those little disconjuncts, So right now for Aquarians, there's trying to figure out how to get on the same page with your voice in the world, your intelligence in the world, professionally, vocationally, and your creative essence. And there's a conversation around those two spaces: purpose, achievement, creativity. How are they not connected, or how could they be better connected? Why aren't they connected? Where is there self-deception going on? Or where do you feel like you're living some kind of double life professionally and creatively? Those are very important questions for Aquarians right now. All right, finally for Pisces. Full moon's in your 4th house, Mercury direct in your 9th. First of all, I would say that this is a peak moment for things like home, family, emotional truth that's surfacing, maybe in a more private sphere of life. Again, home, domestic life comes to mind, or family, karma in general. Maybe this offers a moment of release or resolution. However, the subtext is Mercury in the 9th, which has to do with clarifying visions, guiding principles, teachings, insights, greater philosophical or spiritual learning or realization. And so what we want to do right now, let's just say, I have a vested interest in astrology, but in my home space, I have to kind of hide it because my spouse isn't so interested or open, or is a little cynical and it hurts my feelings. Or my family is all skeptical and they think I'm out to lunch, so I have to hide it. That would be a kind of 4th, 9th aversion. Or it could be that outwardly, I express a level of spiritual sophistication and depth and commitment, but internally, I'm pretty wishy-washy or inconsistent, or maybe I don't take as seriously. I'm not walking my talk, in other words. I don't take as seriously the things I'm learning and the way that I'm coming to understand things about life spiritually. And I'm not taking it as seriously as I could. So this is a moment of karma and the universe being walk your talk. Make the internal world reflective of the external form you're giving. If you walk around acting like a life coach to every person you meet, but internally you're just a mess, what are we doing, right? All of us sometimes need that feedback where it's like, make the inner like the outer, make them reflective of each other. Your wisdom should be connected to what your internal voicing looks like. And sometimes that means we need different kinds of practices, spiritually, emotionally, ways of regulating ourselves, self-care, going inward, developing a connection between two places that have a hard time getting on the same page. I believe spiritual things, but my inner life is really chaotic. Okay, well, then we need some praxis. Mercury in the ninth connected to the full moon in the fourth might say, for these two worlds to get on the same page, you need to practice. You need to bring these two spaces into communion with each other. It's easy to be interested in spiritual things like an information channel, but not actually integrate them. So how do we do that work? And anything that has to be let go of around faith, home, and family, like old programs of belief, working through the karma around religion and upbringing and home and family could also be part of the work right now for Pisces. All right, we did it. We did it. Thank you, everyone. I really, I hope that those horoscopes were, as always, just useful. Felt like a fun approach today to really, look closely at what? You guys, we're at 402 backers. That's crazy. That means we just went like through the roof with support during this Kickstarter. We went up, I think, $3,000 or $4,000, and like, what was I at? Was I at like 380? We must have gone up like 17 or 18 backers during the live stream. You guys, thank you. That makes me feel so supported. I can't even tell you. Every year, this Kickstarter really renews my faith, because what this I can't even describe it. Let me just tell you a little story. When I first did this 12 years ago, the very first Kickstarter, I was sitting here going, I make this content every day. I pour my heart and soul in it. I don't know how to monetize this and make this a part of how I earn my living. I think this is a really valuable service, but like, I don't know how to turn this. And I know that like subscriptions would kill the spirit of this sharing. I don't want any kind of subscription or model. And I just thought, you know what? All I'm going to do is I'm going to say, look, I make this content. It's there for you. If you like it, please consider supporting it. Like, just put a dollar value on what it gives to you in your year. And if that's just like $10, that's totally good for me. So let's just see what we can do. That was where the Kickstarter came from. 12 years later, at that time, it was just me. I had no staff. I had no staff for almost the first 10 years of my career. And then things started growing and growing and growing. And I was like, oh, wow, I need a full-time social media manager to help me with this now. We moved over to YouTube. Things started exploding. I want to just tell you something in case it helps you out there if you have your own business or you're working on things. This year, the first day of the Kickstarter was the same in terms of the total number of backers and financial support we received in the first day of 40 days plus that we received in the entire first and second year of our Kickstarter. If you would have told me that 12 years ago, that the first Kickstarter would be a success, that it would help me grow as a professional, it supported my choice and my wife's choice to be able to start a family, you guys. We weren't sure we were going to, because I didn't know if I could earn enough money to support a family. I would stay up late, like just worried, like my wife really wants to have kids. I don't know if I can support a family because I'm just a broke ass astrologer, and already like half the world doesn't take me seriously as a professional, not to cry a river, right? But like, it's true. Like, people don't think of astrologers as legitimate. So I'm up against that, but like, can I even afford to have a family? And this thing grew year after year after year. And I swear to God, it's nothing more than showing up and believing that this is a daily prayer that I make between me and God. And I just try to create something that's spiritually useful, astrologically insightful, share it with people. And at the end of the year, say, look, I did this all year. I showed up all year. I made it from my heart. If it was good to you, if you valued it, then pitch in and support me. That's my business model. It's literally, that's it. That's the business model. And we try to make all of the courses, everything we do on sale through the Kickstarter so that the vast majority of the donations are getting classes in return or getting cool content in return. So there's still like a really substantive like give back to our community for supporting the channel. And now here we are 12 years in and we're still going strong. And it's because people like you guys show up and pitch in. And I just can't thank you enough. I've been able to, I have 2 kids now. I'm able to support my family. I have a staff of 12 people that help the school run. We have affordable pricing for everything we do. We're supporting the development of young budding astrologers in developing content on the platform. And you guys are hospitable and wonderful. You support them. There are some people who are really shitty who are like, oh, these people, I don't like, I just want you. I don't want to hear from any other, but those of you who know what we're trying to do are very supportive and you get it. We have co-hosts. We have talented people from the school. We hire people to do donation-based readings. I've given away my reading service to my students, right? And we bring people on the platform. Nightlight is about building something that's bigger than me, that's about community, that's about the field of astrology and its success moving into the future. I care so deeply about those things. And I know that, gosh, I'm going to cry. I just know every year when we do this, when I see this kind of support turn out, that we're doing something right. Not everything. There's a lot of room for growth. I have my flaws. I can go on several month runs of having quite a potty mouth. And I'm just kidding. It's like we're all learning and growing. So by no means are we perfect, but I just feel like there's something special about whatever spirit has guided Nightlight as a community over the years. And I'm just so thankful for all of you for pitching in and helping support it. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of support that's poured through this live stream today. So thank you. All right. If you haven't yet, I'll put the link in one more time, and then let's open up for some Q&A. So here is the link to the Kickstarter. Head over there, pitch in, join the the deluge of support we've received today during this live stream. I think we've had like 20 plus backers just in today's live stream, which is amazing. That's just so cool. So thank you guys. All right. I have I just lost myself emotionally there. So let me get back to focusing for all of you. What are your questions? Let's take some time for Q&A, and then we'll close for the day. Okay. Let's see. Do you use whole sign for horary? I do not. When I studied horary, I was under the tutelage, you could say, of some sort of medieval Renaissance style horary texts like William Lilly, and the use of Regiomontanus or other quadrant-based house systems were what I learned on. And so I've always maintained quadrant-based for horary, which has a lot of very specific applications. Now, I actually took a period of time for like 3 months where I did nothing but whole sign horaries, and it was interesting. But there's so many things that I'm used to looking at and seeing, and sort of have learned and trained myself to the oracle's use of house cusps in Regio for horary, that I've stuck with it. However, whole sign does work. It's like I was able to do a lot of successful horaries with whole sign. So yeah, but whole sign for everything Hellenistic and natal is the way I roll there. How is your Uranus opposition going? Yeah, good. It's interesting because, my dad's Uranus opposition coincided with some pretty serious mental, emotional, professional collapses for him. His mental, emotional health went down. And coming into this phase of life, like 40 to 44, I have hit a period of professional like acceleration that I had never, anticipated. And also, so that's made me have to expand the company and become more of a manager and leader of a team of people and not just like a solo creative practitioner. And that's been a really intense adjustment for me. Leaving a faith community, really cultivating the kind of physical dimension of my being, kind of an embodiment project during this Uranus opposition. Figuring out, like how to, I think my wife and I did a really good job of getting back to us after the kids are out of like the little kid phase. I think we navigated that pretty well. And yeah, and I think like a lot of it though for me has come back to, I have seen my father pass through this stage of life and get really thrown about. Now, he had an upbringing that was far more abusive and toxic than my own. My grandfather was an abusive alcoholic for a period of time, a war veteran. So my father was a great dad growing up for most of my upbringing. He hit the rocks really hard midlife when I was a teenager. And so a lot of this for me has been an opportunity to, like, I've been scared most of my adult life. Like, what if I collapse at the same age and stage my dad did? He was a pastor with public spiritual leadership role. I'm not a pastor, but I have a kind of public spiritual post in life. And it's been, there's been a lot of fear, like, well, what if I were to completely fucking fall apart? It's like a legitimate, it might seem silly because, you see me and I look like put together, but we all have a private life. We all have a life outside the camera. And that's been really scary for me. And I it's not over yet. I have a few more months left to completely fuck everything up. So, but I do feel like, I feel like I've passed some really hard tests, some midlife tests of my integrity, of my life direction, of what's authentic to me. And I would just say for anyone going through a Uranus opposition, if you can be authentic while still being the best version of yourself, it's like be authentic, but also be a sage, like the I Ching tells us. I think that's the challenge of midlife as I've understood it through this passage. So that's a bit weird. My dad is a pastor too. Yeah, us preachers' kids, we got to stick together. I was going to ask you to talk about a time that you were struggling with your faith. When I was in my early 20s and I was, my father's mental, emotional, physical sort of collapse, so some serious health problems, all sorts of stuff. I write about this in the book that I'll be releasing. So I can't wait to share with all of you my new book. It should be done in the next couple of months and you'll be able to order it, pick up a paperback, ebook, whatever. But when he sort of left the ministry and left the faith because of mental, emotional, sort of spiritual health crisis he was having, I almost on a parallel timeline developed an opiate addiction in my early 20s and really had no idea what I believed anymore. I was a youth pastor. I left the church. I was very confused, disoriented, self-destructive. I found ayahuasca, kind of stumbled upon it. And in 2005, had my first ayahuasca sessions, and that put me back on a faith path. Since then, I can honestly tell you that it's not that struggles with faith haven't been a regular part of my life. It's just that what ayahuasca imparted to me, down to like every cell of my body, is that there is no difference between faith and struggles with faith. Struggles with faith are part of faith. To put it, kind of simply. Those periods where I struggle with my faith, in other words, it's never been for me a question of, well, I had certainty and now I don't. It's been more like, I feel so lost. I feel so alone. I feel so forgotten. I feel so bad. I feel a lack of clarity or a lack of hope, or I feel alone. I don't feel guided. But there's something that ayahuasca taught me because of the just pure, like, you're going to survive. You are going to survive this experience that is going to be the most harrowing, difficult, existentially crazy experience you've ever had. At least this is how I had it. This is my experience of ayahuasca. And after you get through it, you're going to go, yeah, all of those struggles are part of reality. They have a place in reality. And who am I to question why they're here? I just have to know that it is impossible for me to get anything wrong in ultimate reality, because there is nothing wrong in ultimate reality. It's all good in some sense that I can't quite comprehend. So from then on, all my struggles in faith have been analogous to difficult passages in ayahuasca ceremonies. I know deep down there's nothing wrong with these things I'm experiencing. That kind of faith is different, though. It's different than certainty. It's just some sense of soul level resilience. It's like, how could I unsee the fact that I'm a spirit soul? And so whatever this is, it's okay to be in it. Maybe that's even like a different definition of faith for me now, I guess. I hope that's useful. It wouldn't be faith if you didn't question it sometimes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I have a question. How can astrologers address the gap between Western psychology's focus on the isolated individual and astrology's view of the person as part of a larger relational and cyclical web? Very good question. First of all, my honest advice to you, if this is a question you have as an astrologer, is don't worry about any other astrologers. Just worry about yourself. So I would my advice, take it or leave it, would be to reframe the question so that it sounds like this. How can I address the gap between Western psychology's focus on the isolated individual and astrology's view of the person as part of a larger relational and cyclical web? When you think about how you can do it, the answer is so much easier. If you're a practitioner or student of astrology, you're going to do readings for people, whatever. What you want to do is make sure that you hold the tension. And the tension is this is an individual who, like the sun, exists as a self-contained luminous ball of light that clearly is distinct from all other objects in the sky. Right? But then the sun sets and the stars rise and the moon is out and all the planets are out, and there's a collection, a community, an ecology of being. There's a one and there's a many. So you have to hold that tension in the way you talk, in the way you exist, in the way you do astrology. And the tension is, I treat my client like they are an utterly unique snowflake individual. And I also never lose the simultaneous tension of them belonging to a karmic ecosystem, a cosmic ecosystem. Learning how to hold that tension and just focusing on it in you is specifically the way that the larger community of astrology grows and evolves. It happens by one astrologer at a time, taking seriously the need to hold that tension. There's no other way. That, in my opinion, that's how it happens. And it happens too if you model and teach people how to do that, or teach people that it's important to do that if you're any kind of astrology teacher. In my ayahuasca experience, my main message was, I am whole and complete, still working on integrating that, especially through healing attachment issues. Yeah. And the other thing that's important, just because I've worked on my own, I'm a Cancer, I worked on my own attachment issues with ayahuasca over the years. Don't forget that you're whole and complete, but you have never been outside of a living relational matrix of being. So it is also, there are two truths. I am whole and complete, and then I am only whole and complete within loving, connected relationships, right? They both have to be true. The extent to which we feel whole and complete should show up in the mirror of fulfilling relationships. And fulfilling relationships should also provide us context for feeling whole and complete unto ourselves. That's the one and the many again, right? So we have a modern culture that places so much emphasis on being self-sufficient. And it's ironic to me that so much of this messaging is happening while many of the exact same voices are saying that we need a rise of feminine wisdom. Well, the feminine wisdom is not that you're self-sufficient. The feminine wisdom is that you are in a relational matrix where self-sufficiency is only as good as the loving, caring, intimate, compassionate, empathetic dimensions of your life. Right? So a lot of us think that I'm only ready for someone if I'm whole and complete unto myself. You know, I just call baloney. I'm like, no, that's not true. It it's there's two things that have to happen. The independent and the dependent are connected. This is why it helps so much to study Taoism, Hermeticism, things I've done long series on the channels in the past, the Tao Te Ching for astrologers, the Hermetica for astrologers, because these texts teach us about the flow of opposites. Independence is nothing without dependence, and dependence is nothing without independence. We carry them at the same time. Okay. Let's see. What other questions? Sorry, I'm looking up through the comment section here. Let's see. A lot of good questions here. Some of them are just like too specifically technical, like chart stuff. Do you have any thoughts on the many theories around the subject of the moon and its origins? Do you find it significant that the Earth has only one moon, unlike other planets? That's, you know what? I honestly, I don't know. I'm not aware of many of the origin stories, I guess. I mean, I've heard some astronomical explanations before from like astrophysicists, I guess, but if there are others, like you know, it was placed here by like like an Aquarian spaceship civilization that set up a satellite or something that I'm not aware. But yeah, it's interesting. It's funny. Have you guys seen the? There's a new documentary film that came out really recently called "The Age of Disclosure." This Sunday on my channel, I have an episode coming out called "Astrology is an Alien Language," and it's some reflections about this. I thought wonderful documentary about what are they called? UAPs, UA something, and it's basically it's a alien UFO documentary, and it was I really liked it. I was really entertained by it, and I thought it was very sober and thoughtful. But anyway, I did this episode on astrology as alien intelligence, and I think you guys will like it. That's coming out on Sunday. Let's see here. I think this is probably a good time to okay, like I have to say this Ophiuchus. I feel like there's a subsection of people in the chat who know specifically, like it's like the history professor, like ask him about World War II, you know, and then your history professor's like, oh, that was like their hobby, and then you can get them to waste the rest of the afternoon, and so then you don't end up having to have a boring history lesson. I remember specifically having a social studies teacher that was like this. What you guys don't understand is that it's the same thing for me. You ask me about flipping the zodiac for hemispheres. You ask me about 13th signs. You ask me about your zodiac sign changing. There's certain topics where if you ask me, I can't help myself. There's some part of me that's so deeply annoyed and triggered by the same questions over and over, then you will get to see me. I become like a spectacle. I'll become a total buffoon ranting and raving for like 20 minutes about these things. So I am now convinced that sometimes people ask these questions because they're like, hey, watch, let's put a quarter in Adam and just watch him go. No, just if you're authentically asking that question, I'm sure you are, about the 13th sign. I did a video maybe 2 weeks ago on a Sunday episode talking about, is there such a thing as a 13th sign? So go check that out because I talk about it then. What about the flat earth? Oh God. That rant, it feels like that rant's so old now. Like I haven't had legitimate flat earthers for a while. So but that was a thing. I feel like that was like a 2020, 21, maybe 2019. It's been a minute, but that definitely had a day, didn't it? Rage baiting you. Exactly. I got to be smarter is what I got to do. Who do you think Bubba is in the Epstein files? Guys, you know what? This is such a soap opera. I don't know why you guys pay attention to this stuff. It drives me crazy personally. Like, I have zero interest in any of it. I'm not saying that it doesn't have some, look, all of the social implications of it are real. And I'm not saying that the moral dimensions aren't really disturbing and the deeper implications about culpability among leaders and like all of it, right? But I feel like, here's my perspective. And I'm saying this as someone who has like legitimately one of my best friends is super into it, following it. Whenever we go out, I talk to him about it. I listen, I hear him talk, and I'm like, so it's like, when I say this, I'm not trying to sound like an asshole who thinks that you're stupid for liking these things. I'm just trying to explain why I have no interest. First of all, I'm too like, my life moves along like a conveyor belt of like sadhana and routine. So I get up, there is a practice, and it happens pretty much every morning. And that practice runs me through the day, and it's all dedicated to like this and astrology. And that focus for me is mostly personal and spiritual and psychological. So admittedly, like my interest and my direction just doesn't have a lot of time and space and bandwidth for like the collective level of narration, which is real. And I'm not saying it's not important. It's just like it's not part of my life. I mean, I hear about things. I'm not like burying my head in the sand and willfully turning my head away from the collective stories. Of course, I'm aware of them. But it's not my focus, right? And I will say, like, one of the things that also really shifted something in me was when I got really deeply into bhakti yoga, and I read the Vedas, the Puranas, and the way that they talk about dark ages, like the Kali Yuga, for example, and just like the way that the sages talked about collective dimensions of karma. One of the things that we tend to do is we tend to think that the particular sufferings and dramas and darknesses and like failures of the current moment that we're living in societally, we think that they're like really unique and really, really important. And there's sort of like one level at which they are unique and important. And then there's this other level at which like every age, every decade, every millennia, every century has always had exactly the same things happening, exactly the same moral shortcomings, exactly the same moral and spiritual atrocities, the same ignorance, the same darkness. And what I have to be very careful of, and this is something, again, I learned from the Vedic karmic perspective, is that thinking that you're ever going to get to the bottom of it or solve it is a kind of ignorance that keeps us wrapped up in and attached to it. When it's like simply a basic reality, like the suffering, the impermanence, the moral depravity, the decay, the darkness, that all of those are just like built-in features of this dimension of reality that are never going away. And so I have like I take interest in collective stories of good and evil fighting themselves out, but I also just find it so unimaginative after a certain point in time where it's like, at the very least, any of these topics for me are interesting only to the extent that they get me to think about something very newly or differently. Otherwise, heroic narratives about good versus evil collectively and historically to me are like some of the most uninteresting ways of thinking about or engaging with collective existence that I can possibly think of. That's just that I'm just being honest though. Like, and like two things can be true. Like, I can feel that way, but like I was saying, like one of my best friends in the world doesn't feel that way and doesn't think that way. And, like we're in totally different paradigms with respect to how we see and view these collective things. He watches the news all the time. I will not fucking turn that thing on for the love of God. I'm not going to turn that thing on. Right. So at the end of the day, one thing that I do see that I do think is problematic is how divisive these things can be when it's like, oh, there's a line in the sand. You don't watch the news, you're ignorant and stupid. Oh, you watch the news, that means you're ignorant and stupid. Why do we have to be so mean to each other if we don't have the same way of engaging with life, especially given how vast and, incomprehensible like ultimate reality is? Like, why are we so sure that we know which is the enlightened way of engaging or not? That should give us such confidence to condemn one another if we don't have the same way of participating in things. So yeah, that's like a lot more that I'm sure you were you were asking about. But all of that is to say, I don't know who Bubba is. I think of it with the first thing that comes to my mind with the word Bubba is Bubba Gump. Do you remember that from Forrest Gump? Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if there's maybe one last question. We'll call it. Let's see. Will Mulder and Scully get married? That's funny. This is a good question. Regarding flat Earth, though, why do most astrologers use the geocentric feature on their software? Well, I think I understand your question. Maybe I'm not understanding it, but it's because astrology is geocentric, right? So that's the simple answer. Which is also a big part of why I you'll see me frequently kind of trying to redirect people to a different epistemology. Like what we're doing is divination, guys. It's not science. And the simplest way of understanding that is by understanding the entire language of astrology is geocentric. It's not heliocentric. So, well, that's a good starting point for thinking about it as a symbolic system, not a literal causal one. Like, I just, there are just mountains of evidence that astrology is not a causal science. But that doesn't mean, like I say this in my Sunday episode on astrology as an alien language. We have evidence that these crafts that we've discovered are moving according to a totally different understanding of physics than we can possibly imagine with our current understanding. And there's physicists in this documentary that just came out that say this. These are like reputable, employees of the government and so on and so forth. They're like, yeah, well, our current physics paradigm can't even understand how something like this is possible. Why in the world would we therefore want to contain a mystical and magical paradigm like astrology to the same paradigm that cannot explain alien life forms? Especially when we consider that ancient astrologers told us that these systems all over the planet came from higher forms of life. They cite gods, daimons, demigods, other dimensional beings, spirits as the disseminators of these systems of knowledge. Like, why would we think that astrology belongs to the empirical causal paradigm? It does not. It just doesn't. So that doesn't mean that it doesn't have an incredible like logos behind it, but it's not one that can be captured by the kind of thinking that's present in like empirical science. And we're so close to understanding. For example, I would say that it's likely that the, like crafts like these, and the Vedas actually says this, by the way, the Vedas have some crazy things that are said about other dimensional and planetary systems and beings. And one of the things that it makes the claim to is that interdimensional beings travel through consciousness, that their consciousness is like the fuel that we would think about like for a jet. Well, I mean, guys, if things like that are real and we're closer to seeing that they actually are real, like all of the actual evidence is pointing us toward paradigms beyond our current understanding of physics, then we should start thinking about astrology as something beyond our current understanding of physics. If we don't, that's where I personally just start to I lose my faith in the in the field of astrology. No, I'm kidding. But anyway, hey, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being supportive of the Kickstarter. Today we just made huge progress. We got like 30 backers during this. I am so impressed and so thankful that I had an emotional breakdown in the middle of our session today. Here's the link one more time. No, this is also false. What about actual medical astrology? This is causal. False. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is not. Just okay. I'm not. This is the history teacher losing his shit. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Anyway, let's move. Yeah. Okay. Here's a good example. This is something that is worth addressing just very briefly, and then I promise I'm going to sign off. I've been hearing some scientific theories about the planets affecting the Earth's electromagnetic field, which then affects humans. Yes, but all of this is still working on a causal plane. And the point is that if you think that the causal plane is what contains all of reality, then you just don't have a big enough imagination yet spiritually. Think about like Alan Watts, Terence McKenna, all of our sages, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, like any modern enlightened spiritual person that we look to has told us this. And all of the ancients told us this, that the causal, linear, time-bound plane is only one small portion of what is real. So the point is, even if there is a level at which phenomenon can be explained or described through one thing affecting or acting on another causally, the point is that is a limited way of seeing a reality that includes many, many, many more dimensions, which are also described as acausal or retrocausal, nonlinear, non-time bound. So we have to start thinking outside of the box about what astrology is and the larger realities, plural, that it's pointing to. That's the point. All right. Anyway, I will sign off now before I lose my mind. Thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. There is a live stream next week. So we will be going live next week to discuss the Mercury opposition to Uranus, which is the final part of what we discussed today. So that'll be fun to get together again next week. Again, find the pledge button in the link at in the description, the top of the comments, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.